Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, Capital Markets Analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today we're going to take a look at the top 10 cannabis stock news stories of the week, starting with number 10. And there's 3 psychedelic stocks that investors should have on their radar in 2020. The burgeoning psychedelic industry has investors tripping for an opportunity to ride the mushroom boom. For those looking to enter the emerging psychedelic sector, there are 3 psychedelic stocks one should bet. I don't know about that. We'll have to see how that goes. If there's definitely a trend where psychedelics are hitting the newswire, I'm not sure where it's going to go from a federal standpoint. So I am definitely not interested in investing at this time. But I think there are the picks and shovels, the ancillary businesses that could absolutely do well. I personally am not going to touch that with your money. So moving on to number 9. TCI CEO said in an interview with Narbi Alexandrian of Canopy Rivers, Canopy Rivers is a venture capital firm with unique investment and operating platform. And the CEO of a Canadian licensed producer, Canopy Rivers, sat down with TCI host to discuss the current state of the business as well as the company's plans for 2020 and beyond. The company has a strategic partnership in place with Canopy Growth, the world's largest cannabis firm. Sounds like this news story hit because they paid for it. Doesn't really sound like a news story. So moving on to number 8, Canopy Growth loans TerrAscend more than $80 million. Per the terms, Canopy will lend to TerrAscend $80.5 million through a second debenture. So in case you forgot, a debenture is kind of a non-asset-backed debt lending. So similar to like a treasury bill or even a bond. It's not backed by anything except the full faith and credit of the company itself, but they do get paid out in front of equity investors in the event of a bankruptcy. So maybe that's the play, is to get the whole company if it goes bankrupt. Canopy Growth announced that it made a further investment into TerrAscend, this time in the form of a secured debenture to the tune of 80.5 Canadian million. The loan followed a USD $10 million investment by Canopy Rivers in late 2019, as well as a subsequent financing by TerrAscend. So interesting enough that companies are still willing to loan on debt and the credit and reputation of the firm instead of asking for equity. They're looking for debt. So there's a strategy there. Maybe that is to acquire the company if or when it goes bankruptcy and gain some of that market from in front of equity investors. So number 7 is TCI Market Watch. The plummets plunge on an oil price war and coronavirus fears. Cannabis stocks tank. So the Dow set a record for single day point drop. Oil crash up to 30%. Index plummets over 10. So an even bigger bloodbath on Weed Street as pot stocks collapse in a sea of red. So there's a lot of marijuana stocks posted double-digit losses on the season. Not a single company was able to close the day in the green. To give you a better idea of how bad the trading session was, you take a look at the top 10 cannabis stock decliners. Tilray leading the charge at negative 23.5%. I've said it more than once that that's the first to go on my list. They don't have a strategic partner. They got a CEO in place who doesn't know anything about the industry, in my opinion. And they'll be the next to go to kick out that CEO and hopefully watch that stock price rebound. All the way down to Harvest Health at negative 16%. Doesn't look like any company was safe from that decline. Speaking of Tilray, number 6 is that Tilray announced a $90.4 million registered direct offering. So they had to find some investors directly and sell them almost $100 million in stock because they couldn't do it over the market. So they probably gave them favorable numbers in order to do that. The financing will see 7.25 million Class 2 common shares and 11.75 million in pre-funded warrants issued. This article asks that if you've ever been so strapped for cash that you announced a $90.4 million registered offering during the worst financial week in over a decade, that Tilray has. The company this morning announced that it will be conducting a financing for up to $90.4 million, expected to close March 17th. That is today. Happy St. Paddy's Day. Number 5 is 4 cash-rich Canadian cannabis stocks for the downturn. Cannabis firms were facing a liquidity crisis even before the coronavirus pandemic. The Canadian cannabis stocks that they've weeded out on this article here, they've got a couple of options. So first on the list is Kronos Group, market cap of 2.6 billion, year-to-date returns negative 25%. Yeah, why don't you catch that falling knife? Afria, um, they're declining as well. Year-to-date negative 40%. Valens year-to-date negative 16%, and Canopy Growth year-to-date negative 28%. So whether they have cash or not, I don't think right now is the time to be investing in any individual equity. I would still, even if Jim Cramer tells you not to, I'd still look at a good index, especially ours. If you're an accredited or institutional investor, we're doing a lot better than the competition. Number 4 on the list is that U.S. or Canadian cannabis stocks. The better buy is ? There's a clear-cut winner, but growing pains should be expected in the short term for all pot stocks. So the question is, should investors consider putting their money to work in Canadian pot stocks, which are operating in only recreational legal developed country at the moment, U.S. cannabis stocks, which are operating at the largest weed market in the world by annual sales? Uh, I would say that Canadian stocks are definitely overpriced. Right now, they're all declining, so they look like they're a value, but are they really generating revenue? Are they really worth the price to earnings that they're offering? I don't think now is the time to buy any individual equity. I do think that the U.S. is offering a better valuation if you can get in. Still, some of them are privately held, but I think that the Canadian bubble has popped, and a lot of consolidation will follow suit. I think there's going to be some defaults on some debentures and other equity loans. And so there's going to be some huge opportunities. I think once the U.S. market opens up, those valuations have been depressed, will look better for all types of investors, whether it's retail, accredited, or institutional, doesn't matter. U.S. is definitely the better buy if you can get in. But right now, it's looking like just a bloodbath. Number 3 is Hollister Biosciences is going to enter the booming psychedelic sector through a psilocybin acquisition. Hollister signed a letter of intent to acquire legal medicinal mushroom and psilocybin firm Alpha Mind Brands. So Hollister announced this morning signing an LOI, an exciting company operating in the legal medicinal mushroom and psilocybin markets. They're developing mushroom products and conducting research and development for psilocybin pharmaceutical applications. Number 2 is Tidal Royalty released a new update on Red, White, and Bloom merger. They also announced it closed an acquisition of Illinois-based Mid-American Growers. Tidal Royalty, they provided an update for the company's executed business combination agreement with Michigan Medical. So it looks like more companies diving into the Illinois new market and see how that rolls out for them. And then finally, number 1 on the list, Champion Brands is going to acquire a craft mushroom cultivator. 2020 could be a year of major transition. So the acquisition will allow Champion Brands to continue accelerating its vertical integration strategy. They announced the execution of a definitive agreement to acquire British Columbia-based craft mushroom cultivator and supplier Artisan Growers. Champion also plans to create the most compelling IP portfolio, clinical pipeline, and drug development platform in the psychedelic sector. So yeah, that looks like a decent opportunity, looking for ancillary into psilocybin until it becomes legal in North America. Looks like it might be a decent play. We'll have to wait and see. So with that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't.